Yeah. But
And
you're exactly right. The friendship, like kind of the friendship between Buffalo and Frank is a big part of that book because there's a lot of it's he's isolated a lot of the time. And I think the relationship is between him and his past and his inner life in Buffalo and maybe the other major character is probably, nature, the physical environment.
and there's a kind of bond that also feels a little bit mystical between man and cat, right? That, I don't. I'm not particularly a cat person, but I know that many people are, and they talk about cats as these mysterious creatures that they have some kind of strange bond with. Certainly, Frank has a pretty. I mean, he's very very close to this cat.
He is. And I feel like too there's books that a lot of books kind of we just talked about a few of them, but a lot of books, have kind of that story with the dog, but not many have that story with a cat. And I always love this story, you always there's stories in the gorge about the this cat there's I think a couple of cats but that would always hike with people and it would show up on the trail and just it was like a stray cat that would always hike with people. So there's cats out there. We've got a neighbor cat next door that will kind of roam around with us out here in our little farm a little bit.
Hmm.
So through Frank's travels with Buffalo, the pine tree, the evergreen, it keeps coming up. Like that's a very important part. Even when he's walking through places when there are other types of trees and he lands on that evergreen. So I have a theory why he lands on an evergreen, but what is the reason that I mean, is I know that has to be something specific
Um,
to that type of tree.
right. To be honest with you, Teresa, I've always been drawn to pine trees, and I don't know exactly why. When I was really young, I stayed with my mom's nanny quite a bit, and she had these huge pine trees at the back of her house, and I would always hang out there. It was like always where I wanted to be. But I've always been drawn to that tree. When I wrote this book, a lot of it I would get up really early in the morning and write first thing. And a lot of it I kind of followed my intuition quite a bit because I would have to start a new story, a lot of times one chapter, one flash fiction story would follow the other. And to be honest with you, it's a little bit mysterious to me why I followed. I didn't set out to make, well, I guess let me start over. The title of the book being born from Pineville, I think that was there. And so some of those early images kind of led the story, kind of help decide where it would go. But I've always been drawn to pine trees. I met a reader at an event. We did an event in Massachusetts, South Hadley, Massachusetts, with Jeff Parker at Odyssey Bookstore, and it was a really, really, really fun event. And I was talking to a reader afterwards, and she knew a ton. She was kind of an expert on Native American mythology and what a lot of plants and trees meant in that context. And she said that actually the Native Americans, the pine tree is very Eastern white pine in particular is very important to them. It represents healing, and so it's a very important tree to Native Americans. I didn't know that when I wrote it.
I felt like it was like a stability thing for him because it doesn't change. It is evergreen. And that's what Frank needed in his life at the time was that because he didn't have anything.
I
And
agree.
what's with the gray suit? So is there something that I missed with the gray suit? Like he always has this gray suit. So was that like his security blanket?
I think that's probably true. I think that's probably true. I think that's almost it was almost a crutch for him. So yeah, a security blanket would fit. And back to your point about, the pine trees not changing. I think he is drawn to the stability of that. And he's kind of afraid of everything changing and he has no stability. And I think that's something he hangs on to. But so I agree with what you said. But yeah, I think that in a way, yeah, that suit does kind of, it's like, I feel like it's almost like a crutch for his identity. Like it's something he wants to escape but go back to because it's kind of a symbol of him at his peak. And so that was the suit that he wore when he was in the first novel, when he was outwardly kind of at the peak of his career as a faith healer and a revival preacher, that was kind of what symbolized success to him.
So you're getting some questions on here too, but so here's my zinger, okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
Describe your novel in 8 seconds.
Describe it in 8 seconds.
Yeah, tell me what you wouldn't even know. You've got 8 seconds.
8 seconds. Okay, I would just say it's a man that escapes his past by following a cat named Buffalo. Is that 8 seconds?
I'm
How
going to
am
say,
I on time? How am I on time?
something about the pine trees. It kind of reminded me of Twin Peaks. I don't know if you ever saw that show. Uh, and there's been some talk about it ever since the director, David Lynch, died recently. But, Agent Cooper comes to Twin Peaks, and one of the first things he asks is, what kind of pine trees are these you all have here? And there's something mysterious, and you see the trees in the opening sequence kind of swaying in a spooky sort of way, and it becomes a kind of kind of sinister. They have a sinister quality, at least in David Lynch's vision, and I think we have to say this whole story. I don't. Maybe sinister is not the right word, but there's a darkness. I mean, this is not a happy, road journey. This is a kind of heart of darkness story in which the main character is in search of something so elusive and so, you know, it's not even clear that it's real or what, but he's chasing his own ghosts, his own demons in some ways. I think in the chat, Michael Mao has some very good questions. He actually has three in a row. Maybe you could look at the Q&A. And
Sure.
uh, and I think the question that in his first question about the meta chapter is a good one. Why did you feel compelled to include that? And I know from talking to you before that it was a question, in your mind about whether you should include it, taking the reader out of it and all of that.
hmm Sure, that's a good question. Actually, Michael Mao is another Bluegrass Writers Studio grad like Jay McCoy and I, and he actually is a voice actor and a writer and a podcaster as well. And he narrated the audiobook. So if anyone has listened to the audiobook, this is our narrator and producer here. So yeah, that's a good question. So why I included that meta chapter and
Maybe
like
you could explain to the listeners, the viewers, what the chapter says first. What does
sure.
it actually say?
Should I read part of that? I can
Sure.
find that really quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I read the whole thing, Kevin, or is that too long? What do you think?
Well, just enough to give the reader an idea.
Okay. Okay, so this chapter is called Kentucky 190, which is the name of the road that drives by the minimum security prison. Kentucky 190. I'm sitting at my writing desk listening to an audio recording that I made last month while driving on Kentucky 190 through Pine Mountain. On February 8th, 2022, I hear myself talking in a voice edged with tired and manic energy about the new book I will write about Frank Russett. Frank is the main character for my first novel. I say the first lines of the book will be, he imagined a town he'd never been to, a town named Pineville. Maybe there was a house on the hill, around a curving drive, at the top of Cedar Street, backing up against the ridge. Later in the recording, simply titled KY 190, I hear myself quote another opening. I imagined a town full of pines, a town I've never been to. I imagine a house on a hill, Cedar Street. The house backs up against the ridge. In the recording, I'm driving down the winding Kentucky 190. The road weaves and winds through Pine Mountain. The highway is all steep climbs, descents, sharp curves. Towering pines spring up beside the road. It looks like Oregon. So many tall old pines with broad, stable trunks. When I see them, they make me feel relaxed. My destination is Bell County Forestry Camp. In my novel, Frank Russet, the main character, stayed there after he was sentenced for fraud.